Thank you. This is the future of endpoint control, powerful paging, intelligent automation, and cloud connectivity built into one beautifully simple solution. So, what are we going to do today? We're going to talk a little bit about our past. We'll talk about the lessons we learned in our present, and then we're going to get into the future with the demo, and we will leave time for discussion and Q&A. Little bit about CyberData. If you are not familiar with us, we were established in July 1974, originally focused on point of sale technology. These pictures that you're seeing were what a typical booth looked like at a retail show. In the early 2000s, though, started to see a change in the market. Retail stores were consolidating, Amazon was growing, kind of taking a look around and saying, let's pivot. Let's do something else. VoIP was becoming very big, and we decided to work on and release a SIP speaker, the first SIP speaker in 2006. And over the next 10 years, we expanded our offerings. We added intercoms and strobes and call alert buttons. So a lot more endpoints added to our line. And around 2017 to 2023, there was a period where we launched a couple of programs, the design services and the certified partner program. Those two programs helped us to yield much deeper insights into the market needs, which eventually has led to the development of Terminus. So what have we learned? Over the course of talking with end users and service providers and installers and integrators, key drivers, their themes keep coming up to the top. Convenience and efficiency, safety and liability increasingly important, and rapid response. Okay, if this happens, then what? I've highlighted a couple of things that we kept seeing. Provisioning and setup. We kept hearing, phones are easy, endpoints take a little bit of time. Issues around support. There are both internal and external support teams, and they're going to be the first point of contact. So, depending on what happens when an issue arises for end users, if I'm an integrator, I may have a couple of phone calls where I'm driving 30 miles this way, 25 miles another way. You've got to respond. And additionally, that leads into response time and SLAs. We talked a lot with our channel partners where a lot of them are on these service level agreements. They need to respond quickly, in some cases, going on site to the address where that issue is to resolve it. And finally, we were hearing increasing requests for basically, can't you make something that will manage all of this and make my life easier? So that brings us to the future. Terminus Cloud Control. I want to call attention to the tagline here: manage, monitor, notify. This is not your typical provisioning tool or management tool. This is so much more. First of all, it's got a very robust scheduling and notification engine as part of this overall solution. But we've broken it down. So manage, that touches on convenience and efficiency. So how about logging in every day? You get a single pane view. You can manage these solutions from anywhere in the world and from any device in the world. You can manage announcements. This can be for schools, retail, control volume, do lockdown capabilities. As an example, I might be a facilities manager or an operations manager, and I'm in the Northeast and I've got a bunch of stores on the Eastern Seaboard heading south. And I see that through news reports, there's some hurricanes brewing. And you know what? I'm going to want to send a message to those stores in that impact area. You know what? We're going to do a promotion. We're going to offer promotions on salt and on shovels today. I want to send those right to those stores in that impact area. You can do that from anywhere and from any device. Let's talk about monitoring, and that really touches on the safety and liability. particularly in schools, but it's not just about schools anymore. Real-time device status. You want to know your equipment worked during any kind of event. You want to be able to check that and know that. Again, safety and liability. You can schedule group access control. Maybe I've got a bunch of warehouses and we've got a big warehouse and we're going to do a big cleanup. I only want a certain amount of staff to have access to that warehouse on a certain day within a certain amount of hours. I can do that from my location and from any device, and I can monitor all of my locations. And then finally, that notify, that rapid response. This, as I said, has a robust notification engine, single touch mass notification. You can set up device actions that will generate notifications like email, text, SMS, immediate notification of a lockdown. As an example here, maybe I'm a facilities manager and I've got a bunch of facilities. I've got maybe one in Texas and one in Illinois and one in California. But I see that the California location is close to where there are wildfires. I can push SMS. We can decide to close that location early, make the announcements because we want to get people home and safe, off the road, home and safe. And I'm also going to send notifications and push SMS to the locations in Oklahoma and Illinois to let them know, hey, you know what? Expect some calls because we had to close the California location. So it's a very robust notification engine on top of managing and configuring and doing things like single touch lockdown. The proof is in the pudding. I am going to kick it off to Paul because you know what? Paul's got a great demo. Let's kick it back to him. Paul, take it away.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Alan. As somebody with a background in engineering, I love the sales aspect that we get, but sometimes you really need to see the system in action. So let's take a look at it. For folks that are familiar with CyberData equipment, you probably know, and hopefully you love the traditional blue background that you've always gotten with CyberData equipment. That's been kind of a mainstay of our products, since 2006, and we decided with the push for Terminus and kind of the refresh, let's refresh everything. So now you're seeing here is the new splash screen that you'll get on any of our devices after you upgrade to version 22 or above. That is basically what we call the Terminus enabled version of firmware. It gives you the capability to tie those endpoints into Terminus. So go ahead and log in here so that way you can see the rest of the web interface. So now that we're logged in, you can see, of course, we're here on a paging server. So to get started with Terminus, we've got two different styles of devices. We've got what we call our gateway devices. That's, of course, our SIP paging server that we'll be using today. Our SIP paging 2570 volt amplifier, and then the Informacast variant of that product, the Informacast enabled paging 2570 volt amplifier. Basically, those are your gateway devices, and then the rest of your equipment is just your traditional endpoints. And you need a gateway device to facilitate the communications directly with the cloud. And as we're kind of looking at it, you'll notice, of course, we redesigned the entire web interface. It's not just the splash screen that changed. Everything has got a more modern design. You've got a left-hand navigation bar with all the same tabs that you're used to. It's basically just got a new coat of paint. Everything's been remodeled. Your kitchen sink is still in the same location, but instead of stainless, maybe it's cast iron or something like that. You've got a new one. Same exact, functionality, just a brand new look and feel with it. I could spend all day talking about the new web interface, but let's talk about Terminus, what we're here to start with. So to get started with Terminus, of course, as I mentioned, you need one of our gateway devices. So we'll just go ahead and go over here to our Terminus tab. So here in the Terminus tab, you can click this little cloud enrollment button. And it'll basically open up a browser interface here, so that way we can get into the actual Terminus system. And the first thing we have to do, of course, is to log in if you're not already logged in. I'm already logged in, but to get the equipment enrolled into Terminus, you need to create a location. And we'll just pretend that we're in my office, even though we're not, because my office is being remodeled. We'll go ahead and create a location called Paul's office, and we'll click create and edit here. And we get another pop-up, so that way you can tie it to a particular organization. Say, if you're an MSP and you're creating it for one of your clients, you can tie it to them. For me, I'm with CyberData. We're going to tie it to CyberData. There's some various additional information that you can put in here, things like your description, your public IPs, if you want to do that. You don't need to do that. The base required information is just the organization that it's tied to and a name for the location. So we're just going to go ahead and hit save and close to create that location. And the final step is to just tie the paging server via MAC address to the physical location. We'll just go ahead and click link. And you'll notice that my browser just opened up a new tab here. So that way we've got our web interface of the paging server, but we're basically done with that at this point. So we'll jump back over to our Terminus Cloud Control tab here. You'll notice that we've got another pop-up. We designed Terminus as kind of a web application. So that way it is compatible, of course, with PCs, which is, how most folks will use it. Or if you're a Mac user, it'll work there. But we designed the actual Terminus website itself with flexibility in mind. So it'll work on things like, say, a traditional mobile-based browser, either on your cell phone or even on a tablet. And we noticed when we were testing with those different things that they didn't like that automatic pop-up that works just fine in a traditional PC-based browser. So you've got a little link here to get back to the web interface of your actual endpoint if you're using one of those particular types of browsers. But we'll go ahead and click discovered endpoints, and that basically instructs our gateway device to scan the local area network and report back all the various different devices that it finds. And that takes about a minute or two. So while we'll wait for that, we'll take a look at the normal page that you'll see as you log into Terminus here, and that would be our dashboard. So here on our dashboard, you get this big single pane view, as Alan mentioned, to view all the various different, statistics that you can look at. So starting from the left, we've got our total number of endpoints that are managed by the system. 39 endpoints that are currently detected by the system, but they're awaiting adoption. They're not currently adopted or managed by the system. 210,000 alerts. Keep in mind, of course, that this is a development environment. This is all of our engineers playing in it, both our cloud development team and our traditional hardware development team. We're all playing in this big sandbox. So your system probably won't ever have this many alerts. We're kind of not resetting it because we want to see how high it gets. I'm really curious if we're going to get to 7 digits, but that's going to take a while. So don't be concerned about the number of endpoint alerts there. Your system is never going to get that high. And we're just, we're developers. We're having fun here. So then you can see we've got the total number of SIP connections that are available and working, total number of firmware updates. So a really nice feature with Terminus is when we push firmware updates in the future, no longer are you going to have to go through our website, download it through the website, and then pull up the the page of every single device and update the firmware through there. If you're on Terminus, you can just see, oh, hey, you can get a notification that a firmware update came through. You can pick all the devices that you want to update and update it directly through the cloud. So no longer do you need to log into them and do it manually. Then, of course, you can see our total license usage. That tells you how many licenses that you currently have and how many that are currently active. And you can see that we're using 41 of our 419 licenses that we currently have available. And then finally, down here at the bottom, we've got what we call donut charts, which are similar information that you got above, just presented in a slightly different manner. So for example, with our endpoints, you can see that we've got 28 that are online, 9 that are offline, and 39 that are waiting for sync or basically not directly managed with the cloud. Similarly, you can see the number of gateways that are online and offline, and then a nice little donut chart here to explain how your licenses are being used. So that gives you a good heads up view of all the various different information, but let's drill down into it because there's a ton of information. So another tab you'll spend some time on here is our endpoints tab. And this gives you the capability to view all the various different pieces of equipment that are directly underneath the control of Terminus itself. And it's kind of in a spreadsheet style. So here in your columns, you get things like your type. And, one thing that was great that our marketing team did is actually include all the various different pictures of the product. So, say for example, you forget what an intercom looks like, or maybe more of an obscure product, one of our paging amplifiers, you can see it directly in there. So that way, if you just forget what a product looks like, you can see it directly in there. And of course, you've got things like your name, the status of the device, the MAC address, the organization that it's tied to, the physical location that it's tied to, its last heartbeat, and then if it's adopted or not. So with all of this information, you really need to be able to filter it and kind of drill through this information, because there is a lot that you can get here. So with our option here on our search bar, if you click the little down arrow, you get some of the pre-built filters that we already have in here. So you can filter by things like, say, the equipment that is online, arguably, and more important, equipment that is offline, stuff that's provisioning, stuff that's waiting, anything that's inconfigured, if there's a failed SIP connection, and then you can also add custom filters as well. But a feature that I really like is just be able to kind of group and consolidate a lot of the information that we have in here. Is you can group by location. So just by clicking on this, it basically just groups everything down to locations that you can expand. And we'll take a look at Paul's office here, and you can see that, hey, all the equipment that's on my local area network is detected. You can see, of course, there's our paging server that we were working on. I've got a 394 speaker, my VoIP speaker, a strobe, a call button, and an outdoor intercom. And the last step that we need to go through to bring everything into the fold or adopt it into Terminus is to go through and click the adopt button. So we'll just go through and adopt all of our various different pieces of equipment. And basically what this does is this basically just enrolls them into Terminus. This does use some of the licenses that you have on your account as you go through this process. But as they go through this adopting stage, the equipment is going to take their existing configuration and push it up to the cloud. So that way, if you've got an existing installation, everything's configured, don't worry, you're not going to have to factory restore everything and reconfigure it through the cloud. That would be a big pain in the butt. Everything just gets pushed up to the cloud, and then you can manage it directly through there. So if you've got an existing installation, no need to worry. You can do everything directly through the cloud, and you don't need to mess with that existing installation. So as we wait for this process, as the devices are pushing everything to the cloud, let's take a look at another tab that is super powerful, and that's our schedules tab here. And this is where you can manage all the various different bell schedules that you have on the actual system here, and you can do it directly through the cloud. And we'll play with Tuttle Test here, which is one that I've used quite a bit. We'll go ahead and click Edit Schedule because we want to adjust the schedule here. And by default, as you pull up a schedule, it plops you into the month-long view. And because this is, let's imagine this is a school schedule, there's a ton of different bells on here. And looking at, a bell schedule, say like, almost 20 bells like we're having here, that's a lot of data to show in a month-long view. Almost nobody really works off their calendar in the month-long view. Everybody works on the week view. So let's take a look at that. And this is probably more similar to what you'll see in, say, your Google Calendar, your Apple Calendar, or your Outlook Calendar, where you've got all of your various different days of the week as columns and then your hours as rows. So that way you can go through and create a different event. So if you're familiar with the actual CyberData Bell Scheduler, the same functionality is pushed to the cloud. So to create a new event, you can just click that little new icon up here on the top, or like what I like to do, we just double click on a particular cell here. Let's pick, let's say that we got an after school program going, and we'll say we've got a 5 o'clock bell. So we'll just double click on that cell there, and you can see that we're going to make a 5 o'clock bell, and you get an initial pop-up. I like to color code all of my stuff, kind of like you saw there. So we'll click more options. That way we can expand it out. And we'll say that this is, a 5 p.m. everybody leave campus bell. 5 p.m. everyone must leave. So now that we've got our name for it, we'll go through and adjust some various different settings on here. Of course, we want our start date to be on the 12th. We want that to happen today, and we want it to reoccur. So we'll check our reoccur option. And this gives us a couple different options in terms of how often we want it to reoccur. Since we're imagining this is a school schedule, we'll just go ahead and check our weekdays. And then we have to pick how long we want this to reoccur. So for our retail clients or our store clients, if somebody does say an ad buy for your location, kind of in the example that Alan gave of the snow shovels and the salt, say, the company that's providing those wants to do an ad buy for, say, 50 ads. You can actually set it so that way it will only play 50 times. But for a school schedule, that's not super useful. We want to pick an end date. So then we'll change our option there to end date, and we'll pick an end date. And when I was a kid, school always kind of ended, middle to the end of May. We'll go to May 23rd. And of course, also for our retail clients and sometimes school clients, we can have it repeat granularly on, say, an hour or a minute basis. So if you want it to play every 20 minutes, every 90 minutes, you have that capability to do that as well. So it's not just, okay, it's going to play on a specific number of days. It can get down to, playing every certain number of minutes if you like. So now that we've got a reoccurring capability set up, we'll just go in here and we'll pick an audio file. I'm kind of feeling Bell's 2 PCM today. We'll pick a page group that we'll tie it to, and we'll finally set a color here. And today I'm kind of feeling like a purple. Let's do a purple today. We'll pick a nice one, a nice little light one like that. That looks good. And of course, you can see it's full RGB capable. So if you've got, say, company colors or school colors or what have you, and you want to get in there and color code them properly, you can do that as well. So then now we can just hit save to save our setting here, and we'll go back to Tuttle test. And you can see if we look at our week view again here, that our new scheduled event occurs in there. So that exact same functionality that you had on the actual hardware on premise has been replicated in the cloud, and you can do all the same features that you would expect. So now that it's been a little bit of time for my equipment to get synced up with the cloud, let's go back to our endpoint tab and we'll filter by location, and we'll take a look at everything here in Paul's office. We can see a couple of my devices are still lollygagging a little bit. They're still taking some time to provision and sync up with the cloud, but we'll take a look at our paging server here and drill down to see, what you can see actually about the equipment itself. So now that we're looking at the page of the equipment, you can see all of the device-specific information. So of course, things like the MAC address, the serial number, both the WAN and the LAN IP address, the time zone that it's in, the organization that it's tied to, the license type that it's using, and of course, device health information. So its status, is it online? Is it offline? How long has it been online? When was its last heartbeat? When did it check in with the cloud? When was it provisioned last? How's that SIP registration doing? What version of firmware is it running? So you get all of that heads up information that you would want from the device. And then here on our right-hand side, we can, you might notice if you use a lot of CyberData equipment, all the various different tabs of the CyberData devices are featured directly on here. So just as an example to show you how quick the settings actually propagate through here, we'll just go ahead and we'll change our primary SIP server to hello world. Helps if I can spell. And we'll change our primary user ID to thank you for attending. And we'll click our little save icon up here. So that way it pushes the configuration directly to the cloud. You can see that our status has changed here to provisioning. And all our various different tabs are reflected here on the actual Terminus side, so you can change anything on the device directly through the cloud. To jump back to our device here to show you how quickly these settings propagate, so we go to our home tab, you can see that we've got this new addition up here on the top. We've got a device status. So if you're managing the equipment remotely, say, for example, you made a change, okay, I need to reboot the device, you can pull up the web interface of the device and see, oh, hey, this device is, say, currently playing background music. Somebody's making an announcement. That device status is real time, so it'll reflect the actual status of the device and what it's doing. So if somebody's making an announcement, maybe don't reboot it right there. Maybe wait until they're done and let everybody on site know that, hey, we're going to reboot the system. It's going to be down for 3 minutes during the reboot process. But then you've also got this persistent banner to remind you, hey, this equipment's under cloud management, so don't make changes on the local device. Make it on the cloud, so that way you can do it all there. And to show you how quickly the settings propagated, you can see all of our settings are already reflected here on the SIP tab. And of course, I took a little time as we were going through it to show off that device status feature, but the settings propagate in about 10 to 15 seconds. So it's basically instantaneous if you make changes in the cloud to the actual device itself. So to jump back to the cloud here, there's some other cool features that I want to shout out that we added in. So here at the end of our various different tabs that you can interact with, we've got logs, and logs are literally logs or events that are taken directly from the device that are pushed to the cloud. So of course you can see all the various different heartbeats. Here is the unit actually getting connected with the cloud. So it uploaded its configuration to the cloud, it parsed the config, and then everything was loaded directly in the cloud. So anytime the device does anything, of course, for my demonstration purposes, my paging server's just been sitting idle. But say, for example, a scheduled event occurred, somebody went through and made an announcement, what have you, all of that would be reflected directly on the cloud, and you'd be able to see all that information here in the logs tab. So you can see directly what occurred there. But another powerful tab is what we call our notes tab over here on the side. And this exists for all the various different, pieces of equipment that you'll manage through here. And this gives you the capability to literally add in, text-based information. So you can go through and type all your various different notes and have it tied to a device. But okay, that's great. That's well and good. You can add in some text on a device. I'm never going to use that. Kind of agree. So if you notice here, if you type a /, it gives you the command that basically the capability to add in a whole bunch of different styles of information storage. So one thing that I think is going to be super powerful is a checklist. So let's keep going with that kind of school example that we've been giving. You're going through and you're doing a big school installation. It's over spring break, so you're limited. You've only got a couple days. Got a crew of 15 guys. Some guys are doing speaker configuration. Some guys are doing speaker polls. Some guys are installing cameras. It's not even related. You got a whole bunch of guys that are out there working on equipment, and you want to be able to, in terms of at least the paging system installation, keep track of all the various different, stages of the pieces of equipment during the installation. So with our checklist feature here, you can add in the notes that need to be done during the installation process. Let's say, for example, we've got things like your cable pull, your switch installation, your switch port configuration, your actual device config, your testing. So that way, as you've got multiple folks that are going through and actually doing the installation, so you get your cable pull done. Okay, that's done. Hey, we're not getting our switches until tomorrow. So we got the cables all pulled. No, that's ready, but we can't do we can't install the switch. We can't configure it. But hey, we brought some, injectors. We can get everything at least configured and done. So then, okay, next day we got our switch installed. You can go through and check off all the various different steps during the actual installation process and retain that information there. And it's like, okay, great, cool. I can use the notes feature during the installation. It's not really useful for me after the fact. Again, kind of agree. So if we come in here and we type / again, another feature that is super powerful, probably not so much for our paging server product or say our 2570 product, because that has a big silk screen on the front. It says exactly what it is. It says what it is on the tin. You don't need anything helpful for it. But say, for example, you're installing our SIP speaker with TalkBack and you're putting it in our new ceiling 2x2 ceiling tile. You'd be really familiar with those ceiling tiles as you're going through and you're installing 100 of them at a school. But say, for example, you get some new techs and you need to send a tech out to site 6 months from now, a year from now. They're probably not going to know what those ceiling tiles look like. So you can literally come through and attach an image directly to a device. So say, for example, you install that speaker, you can literally snap a picture of it on your mobile device and then upload it directly to the cloud. So that way you can have a picture of where the unit is actually located. You can snap a picture of it. So that's super duper helpful there. And if you pair that with our tag feature, the last feature that I'll touch on the actual device, you can add in various different tags. So let's say, for example, this unit is going to be in, Mr. Love's office. I had a school, a high school teacher. My history teacher was Mr. Love. Technically, he was Dr. Love because he had a doctorate. But it could be in Mr. Love's classroom. That could be classroom 213. It could be in, say, the West MDF. So that way you know exactly what server room it's in. It can be on, switch 4. It can be on, switch port 14. So that way you can get very specific information with your tags there. So not only do you have a picture of the unit, so that way the tech on site knows what it looks like, with all the various different tags, you can have all this information in there. So they go out to the site, they can see exactly where it is, and they know exactly where it is with all the tag information that you put in there. And also with the tags, it gives you the capability to sort and search by that on our endpoints tab there. But these tags also come into play in one last feature that I'll show off on here, and that's our automation feature. So here with the automations, and we'll pull up one that I played with a whole bunch, and that is a front door automation. So basically, anytime that a device has some kind of an event, whether that is, say, for example, a unit going offline, a unit provisioning, or in this example, say I had one of our outdoor intercoms, say at my front door. I'm usually doing demos and stuff throughout the day. I wore noise canceling headphones, and I don't have a fancy Ring doorbell or anything like that. I don't know if, I get a package. I order a lot from Amazon. I'm your typical millennial. Say, for example, I had, one of our CyberData intercoms there. If somebody presses that button, that's going to trigger this automation because that button press on the intercom is sent up to the cloud as an event. And based on that event, we can trigger an automation. So when that button is pressed on any intercom that's tagged with front entrance there, we can go and actually generate an action. So based on that, we can blink the strobe that I usually have running. We're going to blink it red. So that way I know, hey, something's going on. I got that visual notification. I might not be able to hear it because of my noise canceling headphones, but I can see, hey, I got a big blinky red light that tells me something that's going on. And then I can look over at my phone because I also have a notification set up to send myself a text message that my package arrived and Uncle Jeff Bezos is there with my package. But let's again tie this back into a school and more of a potential real world application because this is all this is a fun one. Let's say for example somebody's using an under desk panic button at a school, and that button gets pressed. Of course, the under desk panic button can do its traditional actions. It can make a SIP call to the pre-configured, number. It can call, the school resource officer, campus PD, what have you. It can send multicast on the local area network. All the same device features can be handled. But because that button press is logged in as an event, that can trigger an automation. So the device can go through, notify all the immediate people, do what it's supposed to do. But then based on automation, say that could send a text message to the superintendent. It could send out emails to parents to let them know, hey, an emergency notification button has been pressed. And anytime that those notifications go back directly to a device, say for example, there's a small campus police department and it starts blinking the strobes in that police department a particular color, and that particular color is only used for emergencies, those strobes blinking that color could trigger an additional notification or automation. So you can have automations that trigger automations. It can be very cyclical and super duper powerful there. So I guess to kind of summarize everything with Terminus, it gives you the capability, of course, at the bare minimum, to be able to manage your equipment. That's from the get-go, we have to have something like that. But this also gives you the capability to manage, monitor, and notify based on all your various different pieces of equipment. You can handle the configuration. You can get endpoint alerts. Hopefully, you're not getting 210,000 of them, but have confidence it goes to 6 digits. So if you have a whole bunch of alerts, you can get there. And then with the automation capability, you can notify yourself on all these various different alerts that occur. So with that, that's kind of the end of the demo. Let's kick it back to Alan and see if we have any questions.
Well, first, I think Dan would like to make some comments. Dan, take it away.
Sure. Um, we may have this question come up, whatever, but we've had a number of regularly asked questions. And one of them that I thought I would share is, you know, great that you handled a handful of endpoints here, but I'm setting up a couple of hundred at my school. How long does something like that take?
Yeah, and that's a great question. Of course, I'm testing in my lab. I don't have hundreds of pieces of equipment. I don't want that many. I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment. Don't need that many. So, say you're doing something at scale. Worst case, 100, 150 devices, maybe 10, 15 minutes. One of the biggest, gates to enrolling everything is going through in our last step of clicking the adopt button on all the various different pieces of equipment, but you can select all the pieces of equipment, go to mass manage and adopt them all at once. So probably 10, 15 minutes to, get everything in there. It really doesn't take very long.
Okay. Uh, so I'm an integrator. And typically I'm doing installs that are either over a weekend or over a break period, such as spring break coming up or summer break. And I need additional endpoints because I didn't order enough. What do I do?
Yeah, great question. So, some of the feedback that we've gotten from our certified reseller program, because it's great to be able to talk to the folks that actually install and use the equipment. We kind of had an idea that folks do installs over break periods, but, especially talking to a lot of our resellers, that's the only time that they can do it. You're in there in a school, you're installing something over the weekend or over a holiday period. And so you didn't buy enough licenses. You needed, 51 licenses and you bought 50. Dang, what do you do? Well, we built the system with trial licenses in mind for our, MSPs and our resellers and installers. So in that type of a situation, you've got 50 licenses on your account, you need 51 devices. Everything comes with a trial license. So in that worst case scenario, you can get everything installed, set up, configured, managed through Terminus. And then when CyberData comes back into the offices or, your friendly neighborhood distribution partner, they're available. You order the, additional licenses that you need. We send you the license key and you're all well and good. No interruption to your customer service aspect in terms of the installation and the management.
Well, thank you. Uh, Before I do a quick close here, um, to the person that we met at IT Expo, thank you for joining. CyberData has been in business for 51 years, and we're a highly regarded hardware supplier for paging and notification endpoints. And yes, we absolutely still are. However, we have pivoted our business, and we're a lot more than that now. We are, let's put it this way, we have grown out of just sharing endpoints and just handling SMB to an enterprise-sized solution provider. We now allow you to manage and monitor your deployment, but I would feel more importantly, you'll be able to be notified about those endpoints that need your attention or have fallen offline, and you can adjust emergency and non-emergency notifications from anywhere in the world at any time. Terminus is sort of like having a network manager on duty 24/7. So in summary, Terminus supplies complete end-to-end ecosphere for CyberData notification and paging solutions. And we are going to continue to expand this offering as we go into the future. With that said, on behalf of all of us at CyberData, we'd love to thank you for attending, and please reach out to Pam, Sarah, myself, Paul, Alan, with any questions you may have. And with that, I will turn it back to Alan, and I am interested in one particular question on
Yeah,
the survey.
we did have one. I did launch a poll, and we're almost done there. We had one more question come in, Tuttle, about multiple admin rights,
Sure.
multiple people that can maybe change, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely, absolutely. We understand that it's super powerful to be able to, add additional users into the system to be able to manage devices. So currently we've got two different tiers of users that can manage the equipment. Basically, right now we've got an option for, what I would call basically a super admin,
Mhm.
somebody that can get in there, manage your license key, invite additional users, and then we've got your other additional users that cannot invite other people or mess with your licenses. And in upcoming release, we will be adding in granular capabilities. So that way, say if you're front office admin at a school and you want to give them limited access to only the bell schedule and say the audio files,
Right.
you can give that access. And that'll be coming in the very near future.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so finishing up the poll, and red it is, Marchetto, red it is. I launched a poll. It's just a couple of questions. We are going to be following up afterwards. There's contact information in our slide deck. And it's got hyperlinks and stuff. I did want to let you know, everybody that's on, we're offering this demo now. If you have a Terminus gateway, that could be a SIP paging server or one of the 2570 iterations, either the SIP or the Informacast, firmware version 22 and above, you can be trying and playing around with Terminus right now.
Mm-hmm.
Try it free for 30 days. Bring on 10 endpoints. At the end of that 30 days, you like what you see? get a gateway license, and guess what? If at the end of that at 30 days you get that gateway license, you're going to get 10 endpoints for free licenses for a year. That's quite a special. So I highly recommend it. If you've got a Terminus gateway, go in there and play around with it, see what it can do for you. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will be following up. We're here if you need anything. Say goodbye, team.
Yep. Thank you for
Hi,
your time.
team.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye.